Hi, and welcome to the Product B presentation. Isagenix has recently came out with this product, Product B, and they coined the phrase youthful aging, which has been tied directly to Product B. Now, Product B came about through the research of Dr. Bill Andrews, who's a geneticist, and he founded his own research lab in Reno, Nevada called Sierra Sciences. And they're doing what no other lab in the world is doing, and that is exclusively working on reversing the aging process. They have over 60 different US patents and processes and equipment, and they've been working together anywhere from 16 to 19 years on this, and they literally were able to reverse the aging process. The only stumbling block that they had is the compounds that they were using to do that were too toxic in nature themselves. They were synthetic chemicals. Bill was recently featured in the Popular Science magazine as one of the world's, if not the world's leading researcher in this area. Now, he's also an athlete, and this is how the collaborations began between Bill Andrews and Isagenix. A gentleman by the name of Peter Greenlaw was doing a presentation on the nutritional products of Isagenix, and Bill had amazing results on them. And that fostered a relationship between Peter and Dr. Bill Andrews. Now, the more Peter knew and came to know Dr. Bill Andrews, the more he understood who he was and what his research was and some of his stumbling blocks. And so he said, I need to introduce you to the world's leading formulator, John Anderson. And John has over 30 years of formulating products for over 600 companies. He was actually Nature's Ways formulator when they started, went on to formulate for GNC, Nature's Sunshine, Metrix, and a lot of other companies. And he started his own company in 2002 to put out, the highest quality products that he was capable of doing. And so this is where the collaboration begins, and I think it's important to understand that Isagenix wasn't out to look for something to do with reversing the aging process, and Bill Andrews wasn't looking for a wellness company to work with and get his product to market. It was very fortuitous, and the collaboration began with Bill Andrews and Peter Greenlaw, which then incorporated John Anderson. It didn't happen overnight, but this was the process of science meeting wellness. Now, Dr. Joseph Mercola is very renowned, probably one of the most renowned holistic doctors alive today. He has the #1 website in the world, and it gets over 106,000 hits every single day. Now, he knows Bill Andrews, and he's going to say a few words about him here, and I want you to pay close and special attention to what he says.
Telomere lengthening. Has anyone heard of telomere lengthening? Who hasn't? Most people. Would you like to know about that? All right, let's talk about that. Dr. Bill Andrews is a friend of mine, associate. He is the man who has discovered the telomerase gene not too long ago. He's a PhD biologist, and he runs a company. The newest research, Dr. Andrews is one of the leading scientists in this area, is to find therapies or processes that will actually cause telomerase to work in somatic cells. They can take cells of like an 80-year-old rat equivalent, skin cells, and convert it to an infant skin cell. Literally reverse aging in every parameter measured. It's just astounding to think that's even possible. So not only do you slow down aging, you can actually reverse it.
So those are some pretty profound statements, pretty dramatic, and they've actually been able to reverse this aging process in the lab at Sierra Sciences. And it begins with the telomeres and the finding and discoveries of what telomeres are. These, this particular word, most people are not familiar with it, but yet it's becoming very popular. It's kind of the fad that's happening right now within the media and them talking about telomeres and the research behind them. So you can see some of the publications that they've been on in these last few months here. Now, what is a telomere? It's, Bill Andrews is going to describe here in just a minute what a telomere is. He's now collaborated exclusively with Isagenix, and he put together a DVD along with Isagenix to help us explain what's going on here. But before we watch that video, I want to just point out some things here. A telomere is on the tip of every end of the chromosome, so at all 4 tips. And if you could imagine this chromosome being sliced up in 100 million slices, so there's 100 million bases, the telomeres are only 10,000 of those bases, and they're on the very end. Another important thing to know about chromosomes is they're in every single cell of the body. You have over 100 trillion cells. And within the chromosomes, this yellow line here is that double helix called the DNA. And the DNA is your blueprint for who you are. So if your hair is brown, that information is coded in the DNA. And also, even being able to focus your eyes in at 20/20, that's coded in your DNA because your DNA basically tells your cells how to act and how to behave, kind of like how to show up for work every day. Now, this DNA runs from end to end within the chromosome, even through the telomere part, these 10,000 bases. So let's listen to what Bill Andrews has to say about telomeres.
Recently, we have discovered that the science of human aging is really pretty simple. We age because our cells divide and our telomeres get shorter. What's a telomere? Well, to answer that, let's zoom into a human's 100 trillion cells. Every cell contains a nucleus with genes and chromosomes. If you zoom in further, you see that the chromosomes are made up of DNA molecules that are 100 million bases long, coiled up like a slinky. There are long, repetitive sequences of DNA at the end of each of our chromosomes. These sequences are called telomeres. When a cell divides, the genetic material inside that cell needs to be copied. This is called DNA replication. During this process, enzymes that replicate a strand of DNA are unable to continue replicating all the way to the end, which causes the loss of some DNA. And the ends, if you remember, are where the telomeres are. At birth, we have about 10,000 bases, but as we age and our cells divide again and again, we lose those bases. And at 5,000 bases, we begin to die of old age. As telomeres get shorter, humans begin to experience the general effects of aging: loss of muscle, failing memory, poor eyesight, lack of energy, and slower recovery after exercise. The bottom line is this: when cells divide, telomeres shorten. And bad things happen when telomeres get short. As an analogy, think of DNA as a long row of bricks, and of DNA replication as a bricklayer walking backwards on top of a brick wall, laying a new layer on top of that row. When the end of the wall is reached, the bricklayer finds himself standing on top of the bricks he's supposed to replicate. But since he can't put down a brick where his feet are, he steps back and falls off the wall, leaving the very end of the wall bare. As a result, the new copy of the wall is shorter. Just like this brick wall was copied imperfectly, our DNA is unable to copy itself perfectly. When a strand is replicated, the new strand is shorter than the old strand.
All right, so there's some points here that are worth repeating. It's kind of hard to catch everything, watching this the first time, but he was using a brick wall analogy, and what he was really referring to was the life of a cell. So, like I said, we have over 100 trillion cells in our body, and they're dividing furiously to keep us going, to keep us alive. But before those cells can divide, the information that's inside the cell has to be copied. So as the cell's going through its lifespan, before it actually divides, it replicates the DNA, that information that tells the cell how to act and behave so that it can do its job when the cell divides. So then it's ready and it divides, and this cell goes on and does its job, and this one goes off and dies. And that's where he was using the analogy of the brick wall. And more accurately, though, this is the DNA that's inside the chromosome being copied during that cell replication. So when the new cell's being replicated, the DNA needs to be copied exactly so that it does the exact same job as the old cell. But what happens is at the end, like he was saying with the bricklayer that falls off, is the cell doesn't replicate the DNA all the way to the end, and so some information's lost. So when that cell divides and dies off, this new cell that takes its place is not as effective as the old cell. It's actually inferior because it's lost some of the memory of how to act and how to behave. Now this cell won't last forever, and so what happens is it's going to be replicated, and the same process happens over and over during the span of our lifetime. Now, this is important information that's lost, and it's not lost very much every time, but over the span of our life, we see the aging process because this is the information that's telling our cells how to act and behave, even down to the level of our skin and how smooth and soft it is. Now, one thing that's worth knowing is that you can speed this process up by lifestyle choices. So putting toxins into our bodies like smoking and drinking, high trans fat diets, lack of exercise, obesity, lack of good nutrition, and even stress. Stress is the number one thing. And what happens is they'll fuse these bases together so they fall off in pairs rather than just the normal amount during cell replication. But again, this is important information right here that's being lost. And it's being lost gradually throughout the span of our lifetime. Now, they measured Nancy Snyderman's from the Today Shows. SpectraCell Labs actually measured her telomeres, and they told her on air that she had basically lost 11 years off of her lifespan due to lifestyle choices. And she did pretty good composure, keeping composure. You can watch this on YouTube. Just put in the Today Show and Nancy Snyderman and probably the word telomere. And she says, but it's very telling that, this lifestyle choices can affect us this way because I did abuse alcohol and I live a very fast-paced lifestyle, so I always eat fast food, which would have a lot of trans fats in it. And she says I have a very stressful job. I mean, I run the Today Show, the health segment. And so she took 11 years off of her life because of lifestyle choices. She's really internally, she's 70 years old, but birthday age, she's 59. Now, this is where they've literally linked at these telomere tips, the ticking clock within the human body that causes aging. It's nothing new. We've watched people age over the course of our lives, and we've aged ourselves. It's just we now know where it happens and why it happens. That's the DNA that's running through that chromosome, and we're losing some of that information. So he uses a great analogy of a shoestring, and pretend this is the chromosome and the DNA is running through it, and then this little plastic tip on the end of the shoestring, pretend that's your telomere tips. Now, he said we're born with 10,000 bases, and essentially we'll die of old age when we hit 5,000 bases, because what happens is the DNA starts to fray. It's no longer can be copied effectively, and therefore this new cell can no longer act effectively. And so when we're young, we haven't lost a lot of bases, so we really don't show much of the signs of aging because we still have most of the information from the DNA in there. But by the time we're in our middle age, we're wearing reading glasses, our hair is turning gray, our recovery from workouts and falling down isn't so quick, maybe our hearing and things like that are starting to show signs of aging. Then by the time we're 60 years old, we don't have very many bases left. We've lost a lot of information that's keeping us going at an optimal level. So they've known this for about 20 to 30 years now. But what's going to happen now is Bill Andrews and his research team actually discovered something called the telomeres. Listen very closely to what he says here.
Research we completed in 1997 established that humans also have an enzyme called telomerase that can lengthen telomeres. This research was so significant that in 2009, it was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Let me explain this research further. We know that there must be a way for our bodies to re-lengthen telomeres because our reproductive cells do not exhibit telomere shortening and show no signs of aging. The reason these cells are essentially immortal is because reproductive cells produce an enzyme called telomerase. Telomerase acts like an assembly line inside our cells that adds nucleotides to the ends of our chromosomes, thus lengthening our telomeres. In a cell that expresses telomeres are lengthened as soon as they shorten. It's as though every time the telomere clock inside our cell ticks once, telomerase pushes the hands of the clock back one tick. Returning to the analogy of the bricklayer that can't lay the last brick on the brick wall, telomerase would be like an angel that flies in and puts the last brick in place. The telomerase gene exists in all our cells. That's because the DNA in every one of our cells is identical. A skin cell, muscle cell, and liver cell all contain exactly the same genetic information. So if the cells that create our sperm and egg cells contain the code for telomerase, every other cell must contain the code as well.
Okay, so there's some important information that's worth reiterating here. So now, they discovered the telomerase gene, which exists in every one of our cells because our DNA imprint is the same in every cell. So that's important to know. The second thing is that telomerase was actually being activated in the reproductive cells. Now, the reproductive cells divide just like they do everywhere else, and they lose the base just like they do everywhere else on the telomeres. But what happens is the telomerase acts like an assembly line that starts to produce nucleotides that adds the last base onto that newly formed replicated cell, so that the information is all there. It didn't lose any of it. And if you caught it in the video, he called that an immortal cell because it's exactly the same every single time. There's no limit to the amount of times that it can divide. Now, this is what's happening in the reproductive cells. Now, we knew this, we just didn't realize that we knew it. When you're 20, 30, 40, even 50 years old and you have a baby, is that baby's skin, hair, eyes, and organs as old as the parents, or are they younger? And there's no disputing it. They're younger. But how could that be? If the parents gave their cells to the baby to procreate it, that baby should be just as old as the parents. But it's not, because no aging takes place in the reproductive cells. And so that baby gets to start out with brand new cells with all of the telomeres on it, just like you and I did. Now, when you discover this as a research team, then what's your next line of work, knowing that that ability is within all of our cells? Well, it is to take these cells that are showing signs of aging and support those telomeres to help create that assembly line process to create those nucleotides to build the DNA back up and the telomere bases. So when you take a cell that's showing signs of aging, gray hair, maybe eyesight and poor hearing and memory and recovery, and skin is looking older and showing signs of aging, when you take cells like that and you support the telomeres and you cause those cells to do that, what's going to happen? It doesn't take too much imagination here to see what's going to happen. Now, this is what their line of research was at this point. Now, before this, the telomeres were discovered back in the 1950s, and this is less than 100 articles were written in almost 50 years. Then Bill Andrews and his research team discovered the human telomerase, and look how many articles, over 1,000 articles were written on the topic of aging and the telomeres and the telomerase down on the cellular level. Bill Andrews says that was called the race to telomerase. Who was going to be able to do that in humans first? So let's talk for a minute here about what Bill Andrews and their research team did once they discovered this. Now, Bill was at our convention in August of 2011, and he was standing to the side of this big screen that you're looking at here. This is the big Megatron screen, and I took a picture of it. And he was explaining that these little red lines are hits. And what they did is they experimented with over 304,000 different chemicals, drugs, even natural compounds to try and act like that enzyme that could turn the telomerase on in somatic cells. And those are the cells that don't repair the telomeres as soon as the cells divide. Out of 304,000, they found 8. And this is the potency level of those 8. These are called hits, and these are also called positive controlled compounds. So Sierra Sciences discovered those. Now, Lancer is going to talk about what they did. This is very fascinating. And they've been doing this since the 1990s. So listen to what he has to say here.
In 1997, we inserted the telomerase gene into normal human skin cells, grown in a petri dish. When we observed that the telomerase enzyme was being produced in these cells, we then assayed the telomere lengths. We noticed that the skin cells were essentially becoming immortal. There was virtually no limit to the number of times the cells could divide. When the lengths of the telomeres were assayed and we got the results in, we observed that the telomerized cells had actually lengthened their telomeres rather than seeing the telomeres get shorter. The critical question then was whether or not the cells were becoming younger. A few years later, another lab inserted the telomerase gene, the same gene we were using, that already had very short telomeres. These cells were then grown into the skin at the back of mice. Now, in this experiment, they had old mice, young mice, and telomerized mice. When looking at the old mice, we noticed that the skin was getting wrinkled. It blistered easily, and we noticed some gray hair. As for the young and telomerized mice, there was virtually no difference. When we looked at the gene expression patterns between the young and telomerized mice, we noticed that the genes being expressed were virtually identical between the two. This created very exciting possibilities for us because it was the first evidence showing that telomerized cells actually return to a young morphology. They look young, they express the same genes as young cells, And this is where the impact of telomerase on aging is truly going to have a lot of potential and excitement.
So what Lancer was basically saying was they took these positive controlled compounds and they inserted them into normal human skin cells grown in a petri dish. And if you remember what he said here was that they literally were lengthening the telomeres on these normal human skin cells, and that there was literally no limit to the amount of times that they could replicate themselves. And also, they were able to return it back to a young morphology. And it wasn't just like putting lotion on your skin and making it look younger. In every parameter, all the way down to the gene expression pattern, they were able to make those cells young again in every way. So it looked like, and it was, a young cell again by getting those telomerase to turn on and re-add, those telomere bases and repairing the DNA within the cells. Now that's as far as they've been able to get it. Those compounds that they were using were too toxic. But basically what they were saying was we could take old skin, we can make it young, and then we could keep it there. Now, Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who was a Nobel Prize holder in Elle magazine, she had stated if somebody can figure out how to do what Sierra Science has done with these positive controlled compounds in a petri dish, she says that will be huge. It will be a breakthrough. It will change the course of human lives and even human existence. And it will also return people back to their early 20s physically. So pretty huge statements there. And again, this was called the race to telomerase. Who was going to find a safe and effective compounds that they could then put into humans with no side effects. Now, Maria Blasco, she's probably the most renowned in the world out of Madrid, Spain, for working with and measuring and studying telomeres. In one of her articles, she said if somebody could fix the telomere problem and the shortening of the bases, you would fix familial cancers, which are genetically passed on cancers, because in her research, what she sees is as the telomeres deteriorate, that's where the genetically passed on cancers start. They become susceptible. So if the telomeres never shorten, then you would cure familial cancers. Now, product B is not a drug. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any illnesses or diseases, just like the disclaimer said in the beginning. It's a nutraceutical. But that's what her findings have been with telomeres. And now also, there's a Dr. Michael Colgan who joined Isagenix, and he founded the Colgan Institute. And he came on stage after Sierra Sciences at our convention. And he said, when I heard Maria Blasco was doing your human clinical studies, I knew you were onto something because she's the most renowned in the world as far as, studying these things. And he said, if you didn't have something here with this product B, then you wouldn't go to her because she would expose you for everything that you are. So we're excited. Those clinical studies are going to be starting in January of 2012, and they'll be working with live humans and doing the report every 3 months, 6 months, and then at 1 year. Now, ABC News got a hold of what the information that Lancer was talking about with these positive controlled compounds being landed to another research lab. Well, that other research lab was actually Harvard, and it was Dr. DeFino. And listen to what Diane Sawyer has to say here in this release.
And now, eternal youth. Is it in a cage around the corner? News tonight of a breakthrough for some pioneering mice. But we always wonder, what does a fountain of youth for rodents reveal for humans? Here's Sharon Alfonsi reporting.
I feel tremendous.
In the movie Cocoon, it's a swimming pool that turns back the clock for a group of senior citizens. But now researchers have found a way not just to stop, but reverse the aging process. The key is something called a telomere. We all have them. They're the tips or caps of your chromosome, seen here in yellow. This is what it looks like in a young adult. But as you grow older, the telomeres become damaged and frayed, and as they stop working, we start aging, experiencing things like hearing and memory loss. Scientists took mice who were prematurely aged, added an enzyme, and essentially turned their telomeres back on. Look at this picture. The mouse on the right has bad skin, gray hair, and is balding, but the one on the left had its telomeres flipped back on.
And you could see that essentially you now have a dark coat color, that the hair is restored, that the coat has a nice healthy sheen to it.
Even more dramatic, the change in brain size. This is before. The mice had 75% of a normal brain, like a patient with severe Alzheimer's. But after the telomeres were reactivated, the brain returns to normal size.
So it's a lot more than just the skin and the hair. They literally took these brains that were at a 75% capacity and then restore them back to 100% capacity. So Elizabeth Blackburn was right. If somebody can figure out how to do this in human beings, it's literally going to change the course of human existence and really make a substantial impact in people's health. Now, all of this came about because of what Dr. Bill Andrews and his team have been able to discover and to do. And it's just, again, I want to reemphasize that it's great to have him on the Isagenix team with all of his research and knowledge on that side of it and collaborating, as he says, exclusively with Isagenix. Now, this is where the announcement of the collaboration was made a couple years ago. You can see here in the middle Bill Andrews and then John Anderson and Peter Greenlaw, who made the connection between the two. And then you have Kathy and Jim Coover, who are co-founders with John Anderson with Isagenix. So this is where they had first presented to us Bill Andrews and then also that word telomere. And then Bill taught us from the stage. So we were excited to hear about this collaboration back then. Now, Bill went on to explain that, they could take these cells and repair them with these positive controlled compounds, but they were unfit for human consumption because, like a prescription drug, some of them have very serious side effects. If you watch the commercial on some of these long enough of these prescription drugs, they talk about how one of the side effects can be death. And that was the situation here. Although they could reverse the aging process in every parameter, the chemicals were actually unfit for human consumption. So this is where John Anderson comes in and his ability to take natural compounds and get them effectively into the cells and to symbiotically put them together so that they are much more effective. And so John sent over 15 natural compounds to Sierra Sciences and they got 3 hits. And they were very excited, were very enthusiastic about these results and called and left a voicemail on John's phone. And to hear Bill's excitement, they played that voicemail over the speakers at convention. And you just don't normally hear a scientist getting really excited like a kid in a candy store. So it was really neat to hear the excitement coming from Bill Andrews on these 3 hits. Well, John Anderson, and you can see here also as well that the potency isn't as high as these positive controlled compounds, but John didn't stop there. He sent over another 62 compounds, and these are the results that they got. And so you can see the hit comparisons there. And we actually have about 12 or 13 different compounds now within product B, and they're continuing to research, they're continuing to test these natural compounds for even more hits. But at this point, product B is absolutely 100% safe. These ingredients have been used in the wellness industry for hundreds of years here and thousands of years in other cultures. And they had talked about from the stage that you can have too much of a natural ingredient. Like let's take iron, for instance. Iron would become toxic within the human body if you took too much. So we'll say that's 100% threshold. You take 100% of the iron and you can start to have some side effects. Well, they explained that all of the ingredients within product B are not even to the 10% threshold. They literally said from the stage you could take more than what's recommended on the bottle, but we recommend you taking just the 4 that it recommends a day, the 4 pills. And because that's what we see is all you need, otherwise you'd be wasting it. So very important to understand that these are absolutely safe, 100% natural, and there's not even a child-proof cap on the bottle. Whereas you might go and get some Flintstones vitamins from the store, they have a child-proof cap and they have a poison control phone number on there as well. You're not going to find that on product B. Now the recommendation is 4 capsules a day, 2 in the morning, 2 at night, and 18 years and older. So follow the directions on the bottle, but absolutely 100% safe. Now this is a high output screening analyzer that we're looking at here from Sierra Sciences. And what you're looking at is the telomere lengths of normal human skin cells. And you're looking at the before and after, only this time it's not their controlled compounds, their positive controlled compounds. This time it is with product B's ingredients. And so you're seeing with natural ingredients, the telomeres are being supported, and it has grown the telomeres bases on normal human skin cells. So we can literally say that product B's ingredients have been proven to regrow telomeres on normal human skin cells in vitro, which means in a petri dish. So here's where they released product B, August 2011. There was several pre-launches that were going on, so there were some people that were on the products before it actually launched to the public, and I was privileged enough to be able to be a part of that pre-launch, and we were sharing our results with people and doing phone calls. And so there was some anticipation from a lot of people to get on the products. And when they released it, they sold $1.4 million that afternoon. So that's kind of a clue. Also, the first full month that product B was available was their biggest month in 9.5 years. And the company has seen unprecedented growth. So here we are in this economy that's not doing so well. We just had our best month ever in Isagenix. And again, that's a clue. People are getting results, and those results are the kind of results that other people are looking for as well. Now, we named it Product B, and I'm just closing up here. Product B is for a future billion-dollar seller in this product alone. The goal of Isagenix has been, their mission statement is to impact world health and be the largest wellness company in the world in doing that and playing a role in world health. And so their goal for measuring that has been, we want to be to $1 billion a year. That was even before Product B came out, because that's a great indicator that you're selling a lot of products and a lot of people are getting healthy. So when Product B was researched and put together, they said this product, we believe, has the ability to produce $1 billion a year within the next 2 years. Now the company as a whole has done $1.6 billion with their products since 2002. And we're at about 300 million a year right now. So there's quite a bit of growth left, but they believe that Product B will get us there within 2 years. So Bill Andrews said, when I heard why you called it Product B, it really indicated to me that you don't really get it, because it should have been called Product T for trillion. It says this is going to be the dawn of the world changing. It will be a $1 trillion product. It says it'll change the world as you and I know it. And he can't think of any health issues that telomeres don't play a role in. And that we have the power and the ability to help people regain their health and vitality and live a quality life to 100 years and beyond. So pretty amazing things that are going on in the world of Isagenix, and I've just been thrilled to be able to share this with you and to break this news to you. Now, that whole race to telomerase, Bill Andrews had talked about when they discovered the telomerase gene and all the different labs and papers that had been written. He says, we just crossed the finish line in supporting telomeres, and there's nobody in second place. So it's great to have Bill Andrews and John Anderson collaborating together and getting this product B to us. So this whole aging market is a huge market, and there are a lot of people that are looking for youth and vitality to be restored. And I found this little cartoon with the fountain of youth on it. You know, there's over 10,000 baby boomers that are turning 65 every day for the next 20 years. So this has been going on, and they're only 20% of the population, but they're over 50% of the economy. And they've created their wealth, and they deserve it, but they're spending their wealth on trying to get their health back. You know, your health is your #1 asset, and as you start to lose it, it starts to become your #1 priority. And so how much would they be willing to pay for youthful aging? Well, there's an article that has in relationship to the economy and says that they'll be willing to spend, baby boomers will be willing to spend over $291 billion by the year 2015. That's because, again, our health is our #1 asset. So what does it take to have access to these products? It's a $19 a year wholesale membership. That gives you access to all of the products of Isagenix. It's like a Costco membership, except for Costco charges you $50 a year. We're only charging you $19. And you can buy as much or as little products as you want. Just get back with the person who got you here. They'll help you get set up with your wholesale membership. It's not something that, you know, you can set it up any way you want. So the person will go over with the options with you on setting up that account. Now, one other thing, Bill and John and Jim and Kathy Coover all said we could sell this product for hundreds of dollars and people would buy it up, but we're not going to do that. We want anybody who wants to enjoy the effects of youthful aging to be able to enjoy it and not take food off their table. So it's not a decision of, are we going to eat this month or am I going to take product B? You know, I was doing a presentation at a salon where they said, we have eye creams that are over $100, and all you do is rub the cream around your eyes and it gets rid of wrinkles just around that eye area. And they say it works, but as soon as you stop using it, the wrinkles come back. So people are willing to spend money and a good amount of money to keep that youthful appearance. But this is going so much further beyond just the skin and our hair and things like that. And so they priced it at $77 a bottle. And if you order 2 bottles, you can get it at $72 a bottle. So 1 bottle is enough for 1 person for an entire month. Comes with 120 pills. You do 2 in the morning, 2 at night. And if you get 2 bottles, you'll save $10 on that purchase. And I highly, highly recommend you being on this product for the rest of your life, or at least as long as you want to continue to keep your telomeres healthy and supported. But it takes up to 120 days to infiltrate every cell with what you've been putting into the body on a daily basis. And so we have people see results right away, but obviously the longer you're on this, the more effect it's going to have with your health and your vitality and your appearance, your youthful appearance. Again, it takes up to 120 days, so I strongly, again, recommend that you be on it for at least that long before you decide anything. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share this with you. One other thing I wanted to say too, along with being on the product, the body is constantly replacing itself, replacing those cells furiously, minute by minute. But it takes up to 7 years for the body to completely replace all of the cells that are in it, up to 7 years. So again, the longer you're on it, the more dramatic the results. So thank you. Get back with the person who got you here, and have a great day.